And we're going. And we got somebody join right now. Okay, I'll kind of let them in as they come. All right, guys. So we're going to open things up with the first slide here. Obviously, today we want to talk about sustainable fat loss. And not only that, we also want to give you some practical strategies because we don't just want to make progress for now. We want to make progress that lasts. So that's going to be a key thing in this conversation we're going to have today. My name is Paris, and here with my sister, who some people don't know is actually my sister, Courtney, and we're going to guide you through this conversation today. So really excited about this one. Just before we get started, a little bit about us. Why should you even listen to what we have to say? Well, we have a 3-person team of coaches here. Myself, obviously Courtney, and then Coach Steve. Our values are science, sustainability, and success. We think if you combine the science, make something that's sustainable, you're ultimately going to be successful with your goals. And just our kind of credentials here, we've helped over 200 people in their, we'll call it transformational journey. We have 15 unique different certifications and educational credentials revolving around this stuff. And, we have 15 plus years of coaching experience combined and 7 plus credentials revolving around this stuff, unique ones. So that's kind of a little bit about us as we get started here. Today's agenda, which I'm really excited for. First, we're going to start off with how does fat loss work? Okay. Then we're going to move into what is the difference between fat loss and weight loss, and then why should we even care whether what we lose is fat or just body weight. Then we're going to move into how can you make fat loss and weight maintenance easier, because we know sometimes this isn't the easiest process. So how can we make that easier? Then we're going to move into a question and answer. So if you want, you can type your questions in the chat or wait till the end. We're going to save all questions to the end just so we can keep the flow of the conversation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A at the end. And then James is going to give us a special announcement as well. All right. So that's kind of the breakdown for today's agenda. And I'm going to pass the baton to Courtney, who's going to start us off with section 1.
Thank you. So this is like the core of that science pillar that Paris just mentioned is at the root of what we do. And we're going to talk about how fat loss works. So first and foremost, calories in, calories out. It's probably a concept many of you have heard of and are familiar with, but today we just want to break it down and make it feel a little bit more tangible, because it's not that simple, right? It's not just like saying it's an equation and that's it, right? So calories in, a little more straightforward because it's everything we eat. We get calories through food alone and just that. But on the other side of things, calories out, how we burn calories or how our bodies utilize calories, there are 4 different primary methods to do that. So let's take a quick look at them. The first one is your basal metabolic rate. So this is what Paris often refers to as keeping the lights on. It's your body existing. So that could be breathing functions, organs running, all of that stuff. The second is non-exercise activity. So we do move our bodies throughout the day in ways that aren't just our workouts, right? We go pick up groceries, we take the dog for a walk, we fidget when we're nervous at our desks and we have a big presentation like today, I don't know, something like that. And then, of course, we do have our intentional exercise activity like your workouts. And lastly, there's also this one, which is a little sciencey, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's the thermogenic effect of food. And essentially, to actually digest our food, our body does use calories. It uses energy to do that. So some of the calories that we burn actually, ironically, come from breaking down the food that we eat. So nope, hide that. You always are so eager. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody, if you had to guess which of these 4 methods or 4 functions actually burns the most calories, which one would you pick? You can put it in the chat, you can say it out loud, whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Might have given it away.
Yeah.
Your BMR, isn't it?
Yeah, we got BMR, we got BMR from
BMR?
Mark too. Any other guesses?
I'm going to let you guys have the final say there. All right, so yes, it is BMR. You guys got it right. So the interesting thing, though, is it can be between 60 to 75% of the total calories you burn in a day, just from existing, right? So when it comes to exercise, and for this purpose, we've grouped together non-exercise activity and exercise activity. It's somewhere between 15 and 30. And this does vary by person, but you can see it's actually less than all this effort we put into our workouts actually burns less calories than us just sitting around all day. So it's an interesting food for thought, and we're going to come back around to this again later. Well, the reason we need to know this, and we need to know where our calories come from and where our calories go, is because of this concept of energy balance. And energy balance is the state at which calories in match calories out. So essentially, all the calories we get from our food is the same as the number of calories we burn in a day. And this is how we maintain weight. So if we were to say, hey, I'm just trying to keep my body weight the same, we need to match calories in to calories out. And that is a state of energy balance. If we tip that, if we start to tip that scale, and all of a sudden we're eating more calories than our bodies are burning, that's called a calorie surplus, meaning we have a surplus of calories coming in. And that is what leads to weight gain. On the flip side, that scale can also tilt the other way. And all of a sudden, if now we're actually burning more calories than we're taking in, we are in a calorie deficit, meaning there's a deficit or a discrepancy between how many calories we're taking in and how many we're burning. This is where weight loss comes in, because our body needs to burn those calories from somewhere. And if it's not getting it from food, it's going to burn the stored energy that we have, which is typically mostly body fat. One thing you'll notice is that all successful weight loss methods create that same effect. They tilt that energy balance scale to create a calorie deficit. No calorie deficit, no weight loss. That's pretty much the most streamlined way we can start to think about it. And Paris is going to explain now how that works across different weight loss methods to get the same end result of a calorie deficit.
Thanks, Court. Okay, so obviously, as she just said, if we want to lose weight and if we want to lose body fat, we have to create a calorie deficit, right? We have to be expending more calories consistently than we're burning. And you might have heard or used one or more of these common kind of weight loss strategies, we'll call them. I'm going to show you kind of 6 different examples in total. Here's the first 3 to break it down. The first one is flexible dieting and food tracking. So typically you'll set a specific daily target for calories or just nutrition targets in general. You might have heard the term macronutrients before, protein, fats, and carbs. A lot of times flexible dieting includes setting targets for those on a daily basis, then you'll hit those. And how this helps create a calorie deficit is because it keeps our calories in, quote unquote, lower than what we'd estimate for our daily calorie expenditure. So it's a way of controlling our calorie intake. Then we have GLP-1 medications. Some of you might have used this or heard these before. Most common one would be Ozempic. Essentially, this has a very big appetite suppressing effect and can greatly reduce cravings and kind of just, cravings even towards higher calorie foods. And when we have a very limited drive to eat and we just look at food and we're like, kind of not really want that, obviously we tend to just eat fewer calories, and therefore we can create a calorie deficit potentially, right? Similar kind of effect with bariatric surgery. There's obviously different kinds, but essentially one of the main things that happens is you just get full super fast, and therefore you end up eating less. And there's also some kind of hormonal and metabolic changes that affect kind of appetite and fullness cues. So again, all 3 examples end up just causing calorie restriction. Then we have 3 other examples. The first one is meal plans. Now, something I do want to note is, technically speaking, only registered dietitians can prescribe, I'll say, a specific meal plan. Nutrition coaches can give recommendations on like what you can or might be great to eat, or give you an example day of eating. But in terms of actually prescribing like meal plans that you have to follow, technically registered dietitians are supposed to be the ones that are doing that. But this essentially outlines your daily food intake, right, to a specific number of calories, and therefore we can consistently control our calories, right? Moving into fad diets, pretty much any diet with a name on it, these tend to revolve around cutting out specific food groups. Like, for example, carnivore diet, you're probably essentially cutting out every other food group apart from just meat. So when we cut out more food groups, we just tend to end up restricting calories and reducing our calorie intake, okay? Again, can work in the short term, but we're going to talk about why maybe in the long term not such a great idea. And lastly, intermittent fasting. All this is essentially restricting the time window for your eating. And if you restrict the amount of time during the day that you, quote unquote, allow yourself to eat, you end up reducing total calorie intake. Okay, there's nothing magic about any of these things I just showed you. They're all just ways that we end up reducing our calorie intake and can elicit a calorie deficit. Okay, so key thing, if weight loss is the goal, we need a sustainable way to consistently create a calorie deficit. Now, there's some important verbiage here. We need a sustainable way. Sustainable meaning it's something that we can stick to, We need to do it consistently over time. So we can't just do it for 1-2 days. It needs to be something done consistently. And then ultimately, as we've been saying throughout this presentation, we have to achieve a calorie deficit. Okay, so this is why it's really important sentence here. All right, this is our client case study here. First one here. You're going to see a few of these pop up here. This is a perfect example of somebody who was trying to do a bunch of workout classes, but was struggling with weight loss. And then once we established some key sustainable habits and were able to control her calories in a way where she was still eating enjoyable foods, but eating more quantified, combining that with good home workouts and some daily steps, and she saw a lot of success in getting the weight off, which was her number one goal. Okay.
All right, thank you, Jamie. I do see your notes popping up there, so we'll address them at the end. The difference between fat loss and weight loss, right? So we have defined how we can make weight loss happen, but there is a catch, because that's not always just the only goal. So we want to define the difference here between these two concepts and explain why it actually matters quite a bit. Paris has this great concept that he uses to illustrate this. So I asked our friend ChatGPT here to visualize it for us. And you can see that on the left-hand side, we have a gentleman walking around. On the right-hand side, we have a gentleman walking around with a sticky note on his head. Now, this represents how we actually exist in the world. We walk around in our bodies. We do not walk around with our scale weight plastered to our forehead, right? So that's an important anchoring thought that kind of helps us understand why fat loss is more important than just weight loss. Now, here's the difference. Weight loss represents a decrease in absolute body weight over time. So you step on the scale and it is measuring your mass in space in that moment. How much do you weigh? And there are a number of different variables that actually affect how you weigh in any given moment. And that's a topic for another day. But the difference is with fat loss, we want to be looking at a decrease in body fat over time. Now, this is typically coinciding with a decrease in body weight because body fat does carry weight. So when you lose body fat, you can lose some weight. But it is not the only thing that has weight. So ideally, what we want to be striving for is actually a change in body fat. So you'll hear us refer to fat loss instead of weight loss as the terminology for the rest of this presentation, with some intention behind it. And you might be wondering, like, okay, is this actually, like, when we lose weight, does it actually, how much of it is actually not fat? Well, we wanted to anchor us in this stat because this actually surprised me when I first heard it, right? 40% of weight loss can actually be lean mass, not body fat. So when you lose large amounts of weight, nearly half of it can be things that aren't body fat. And the number one thing that is wrapped up in lean mass is actually muscle and muscle mass and muscle tissue. And this is actually a larger concern for individuals who are using GLP-1 medications. They tend to see a higher rate of muscle loss. And for those who have undergone bariatric surgery, because the appetite suppressing effects do also have a role to play in impeding muscle maintenance and causing some muscle loss. So it is really important. But you might be saying, okay, like, my goal is still to lose body fat. Why should I even care if I lose muscle or not? Well, here's a few reasons. The first is bone density, right? Which kind of is a measure of how fragile we are and how likely we are to injure ourselves or break a bone or something like that. And muscle mass directly impacts bone density. So more muscle mass, more bone density, more protection against injury risk. Next is metabolism. Remember that BMR, kind of that was a core function of our calories out? Well, actually metabolism is influenced by the amount of muscle mass you have in your body. Now, this third one, I actually get reminded of every time I'm like trying to challenge myself to bring all the groceries in one trip, or if I'm, on a flight and I'm putting my carry-on in the overhead bin. Quality of life, the daily movements or daily actions that we might take or encounter that actually rely on us having some strength. Next, aging. As much as many of us, don't want to think about it, we're all aging. We're all somewhere in the process of aging. And having muscle mass on our body protects us against many of the effects of aging and keeps us healthy and functional for longer. So we can start to think about health span instead of just lifespan. And then lastly is physique. Getting people in good shape is kind of what we specialize in. So we would be remiss if we didn't comment on physique. And yes, aesthetics are great, but it's not the only reason why physique matters, right? Physique changes your confidence, which also changes how you interact with the world, how the world sees you. how you show up for different events in your life. So physique is on there, absolutely, but it's aesthetics plus a lot more.
All right, that's awesome, Court. So, okay, we're like, all right, we got to keep this muscle, or we want to gain some more muscle. What are going to be the important factors? So we put together the 3 Avengers for fighting the war against muscle loss. I love superheroes. I love superhero movies. So our 3 Avengers are protein intake. Okay, very important. Going to help give our body what it needs to retain or grow new muscle. Resistance training, or weightlifting, whatever you want to call it, putting tension on your muscles at the gym. This is the primary signal to our body to keep the muscle or grow new muscle. Without this signal, we can't do that. And then the last is rate of loss and not losing weight too fast. Now you might be thinking, Paris, I would love to lose weight too fast. That's like my dream come true, which might be the case when you're starting at a slightly higher body fat percentage. But as you start to get within the healthier ranges, we want to make sure that we have a controlled rate of loss and a sustainable rate of loss so that we don't sacrifice muscle tissue. All right. This is a case study, perfect example of muscle being built as well as maintained and probably built on the way down while losing body fat, achieving a pretty impressive look. I think this was a 35-pound difference. He did have some past lifting experience, so he did have some foundational muscle as well, but he wasn't really consistent with that. So what we did was, made sure he was eating the right amount of protein for his body, made sure he was following a lifting program for him. And then also we set a reasonable timeline of 17 weeks. So we had a steady pace. We didn't just crash diet him and say, okay, we're going to try to do this all in 8 weeks, because that wouldn't have worked well. Because you can see he was starting with some body fat, but he wasn't starting at very astronomically high levels of body fat. So we would have sacrificed muscle tissue if we didn't do it in a smart way. All right. So if we think about it, here's the real bonus of also having some muscle goals. Number one is you have a fresh purpose after fat loss. I'm going to say this is very, very important to hear. Fat loss might be your primary focus right now, but it's not going to be your forever focus. And there's going to be a time where you've reached success with your fat loss journey, and you're going to have a look in the mirror and be like, now what do I do? Like, I'm lost. I need a new goal. Well, that goal can be the quest for some more muscle mass, right? Ideally. So fat loss is not a forever phase. And then it can also shift away your focus from being obsessed with a scale. Like just that example before, we don't walk around with a scale weight on our forehead. And sometimes we get hyper fixated on the scale, especially when we're on fat loss journeys. But we have to remember that putting more focus into things like performance or muscle mass, and doing well in the gym, that can all give us a renewed sense of purpose away from the scale. And then also, if we do want long-term physique development, not just being a lighter human being, we need to have some muscle mass. If you look at physiques that look impressive, they all have muscle mass. If you look at the superheroes in the movies, they all have muscle mass, and that is what creates that overall shape. They're not just trying to get smaller, right? Or trying to get lighter. So you might recognize his familiar face, Mark. He competed at the last Radical Body Transformations. Pretty cool shot here. He's also watching today. So obviously a great example of somebody who had some pretty big weight loss goals, right? We definitely had a desire to lose body fat and see the scale move, absolutely. But we also had after we had some initial success with fat loss, we did incorporate some muscle building phase. And now you can see Mark has great shoulders. He's got great chest. We're even, continuing to build muscle right now. He's got some quads in there. So it's not just measuring results by like how much fat we lost, but it's also with the visual, how does your body look? Your silhouette, everything like that. And then also, how are we performing in the gym? Like Mark is significantly stronger now. He just sent me a video the other week of him bench pressing 225 for 4, which might have been a pipe dream for him if he was in the left photo. So it's just reminding yourself it goes past just being lighter on the scale.
I love that. Thank you, Mark, for letting us share your story, because it is quite remarkable and inspiring. So glad you're able to hear it here as well.
Remarkable. Okay, anyways.
Remarkable.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I put that in one of our social post pictures of Mark.
I had to.
Meant to be. So fat loss. We've covered how it works, but it's not easy. If it were easy, we probably wouldn't be here today. Let's be honest, right? But there are ways we can make it easier, and that's what we're going to touch on today. Let's start with a reminder of our energy balance equation, right? So we can think about making it easier on either side. Let's start with the left side, which is our calories in. How can we make it easier to manage calories in, which is basically just food, which is kind of just snacks and meals, right? That's the only ways we really get food. So let's break that down. Meals that make fat loss easier usually align with what we call our trifecta. And it's my template, because we like our puns. So the trifecta represents how we can design meals that really emphasize variability, flexibility, and balance, as well as success, right? So anytime you are preparing a meal, you can think in your head, how am I utilizing the trifecta? And what that is it's 3 components, as the name suggests. First is a quarter of your plate being protein, half your plate being veg, and a quarter of your plate being carbs. Now, this can be adjusted based on your individual needs in terms of exact portion sizes. For example, if you're somebody, like if you think about your total plate, you know, somebody might need a little bit more protein on their total plate or a little bit more or fewer carbs. But what's really important about this is you can make this work in a variety of ways. It is not super, super rigid. So you can swap out chicken breast for flank steak. You can have white fish instead of steak, right? You can swap that in for your protein source. You can get variety in which veggies you might have from one day to the next. But at the end of the day, it gives you a sense of structure. So you're no longer sitting there wondering what meals are going to support my goals. How do I find the right recipes? Don't get me wrong, I love recipes. I create a bunch of them. But it's really just helpful to have a sense of, I just need to check these 3 boxes. And the bonus with this is it's easy to emulate when you're not actually designing your own meals. Let's say you are visiting friends or family and they're cooking for you, but you're choosing your portions on your plate. You can keep this in mind. Or if you're going to a restaurant and you're trying to figure out what to order, you can know, hey, okay, I'm looking for something that kind of represents this trifecta. I had a meal out last week and I ordered it. It came with chicken, rice pilaf, and veggies. I was like, perfect, that's my trifecta. So it's just a great guideline to help us design meals that make fat loss easier and take some of the guesswork out of the equation. I don't know about you guys, but everything feels harder when I'm hungry. And I'm somebody who I go from hungry to hangry really, really fast. So one of the main things we can do to actually make fat loss easier is just not being hungry. So designing meals that crush hunger. There are 3 keys to doing this. The first is protein. And you'll see protein in a number of sections here today, just because we all know it's important. But this is one of the reasons why it's actually important. Is it is the most satiating macronutrient, meaning that it actually creates the most sense of it creates more of a sense of fullness than a lot of the other foods we eat. The second is fiber. And this is something that often gets forgotten about when we're chasing things like protein and carb goals. Fiber actually represents, whole food sources that take longer to digest. And things that take longer to digest do also slow digestion, keeps us full for longer. This third one is highlighted for a reason. And this is no one specific food, but it is a vital, vital strategy to managing your appetite when you are in a fat loss phase. And it is volume eating. Now, let's actually explain what volume eating is. It relies on this concept called calorie density. Calorie density is the relationship between a food's volume, or the amount of space it takes up. So if you think about a plate, like how much space does it take on the plate, and the calorie content of that food. And food can then be categorized kind of into 2, it's really a spectrum, but we can think about it through 2 buckets. One is foods with high calorie density. They have a high number of calories for a given portion size. Foods that have low calorie density have a lower number of calories for a given portion size. And before we go to the next slide, I'm just going to welcome, we saw a couple new members join us, so I just want to say welcome. We will send out the recording, so if you want to catch up on what you missed, it'll be there for you. And please don't hesitate to ask questions in our Q&A session at the end. Here's an example of calorie density in practice. We've got strawberries, we've got cashews. Now the strawberries, you can notice based on the portion size is actually 10 times larger, 300 grams versus 30 grams. So it's 10 times larger. However, there are fewer calories. So if we're thinking about what is going to make me feel less hungry or what is going to make me feel less full, leaning towards options like the strawberries with low calorie density are really, really, really helpful. And you might be looking at this and being like, well, those are both healthy foods. That's true. They both totally have a place in a balanced diet. But when we're talking about making fat loss easier, leaning on foods that are low calorie density like the strawberries can make it so much easier to manage your appetite, feel less hungry, and feel like the process is easier. Because as I said to start, everything is harder when you're hungry.
This is like such a key concept, guys. If you take one thing away from this conversation, take volume eating away. Because so many people tell me exactly what Courtney just said. They say, oh, I don't eat that much. It's like, okay, maybe the food doesn't take up that much space on your plate, but the calorie content is what is driving whether or not we're going to have a good time losing fat or not, right? So it's really important to be able to look at food, not for how much space it takes up, but the calorie content of the food. So great call out.
Thanks. And you'd be surprised, like you can actually eat a lot of food and stay in low calories when you choose strategically, right? So between the trifecta template and volume eating strategies, those are great ways to guide the meals that we eat. But we also know that our food choices aren't limited just to meals. There's a number of reasons why we choose to eat when we eat. Of course, we can't cover all of those reasons today, but we've chosen to highlight 3 that we think tend to be the most relatable or the most common: convenience, stress, and cravings. So before we dive in, we just have one slide on each of these. And I have to say, guys, like we could have built an entire presentation on each of these. If anybody wants to talk more about strategies aligned with any of these 3, please reach out to us and we will do so. But today we're trying to just kind of touch on a couple of guiding principles that relate to each. Food choices that make fat loss easier. I like to think of it as know your on the goes. I think we can probably all somewhat relate to being busy at some point in life, or just not always being like able to spend all this time cooking and preparing food. So knowing what options are available to you when you're in a pinch, you can grab and go, is absolutely key. Because a lot of the food decisions that we make are out of convenience, and that convenience can either support our goals or not. Now, when we're at home and you're looking for something that is like quick and easy, we're thinking about what can I prepare in like less than 5 minutes, right? So we've got some examples there for you. I just want to shout out the frozen veggies because that to me has been a game changer. And then also when you're out and about, what is readily accessible, either something you can bring from home, something you can find at like a 7-Eleven or a convenience store that helps you manage your calorie intake and also support some of your goals like protein. Now, when you are on the go, I cannot talk about food on the go without talking about fast food. And because we're here to talk about sustainable fat loss approaches, I think it would probably be a little bit naive or ignorant to suggest that we will never, ever eat fast food ever again in our lives. It has a purpose, it's convenient, right? So I want us to walk away today with an understanding of how we can strategically approach fast food so that you still know you're on the goes. And there are always going to be a spectrum of like, let's say, better or more productive versus less good options for you. Now, the great thing is we have the internet, and if you go into Google, and I put Tim Hortons nutrition facts for us Canadians, and I know Kathleen and Danae loved Tim Hortons when they came up here as well. You can pretty much Google any chain restaurant followed by the words nutrition facts and get access to an online PDF. So yesterday I was working with a client who said, hey, I'm eating at Jack Astor's, which is a kind of like casual family dining place we have here in Canada. And she's like, I ate this. How do I know the calories? I was like, let's look it up, right? So you can find that very easily. And so I've put some screen grabs here of McDonald's or Starbucks. Take the time to peruse, even if you're not going in the near future, take the time to peruse the nutrition facts and details of your favorite fast food places and build your own repertoire of, hey, I know when I'm out, I'm going to choose this because either it's lower calorie options or it's higher protein options. And that means you can start to get rid of the food guilt too, right? You are choosing your fast food options strategically with the right information and in a way that can support your goals.
That's a great point. And also in terms of like, you might be worried, let's say you are calorie counting or doing some sort of food tracking and you're not sure, oh, is this going to be accurate if I go eat out? Yes, maybe mixed dishes at restaurants might not be as accurate, but at least gives you a ballpark. But the ones that are more consistent are going to be accurate. Like, for example, McDonald's burger, not that we're recommending that as the option, but I'm just as an example, is the same every single time. Or like the Starbucks egg white, whatever thing that they give you, egg white wrap.
That's exactly the screen grab. How did you know?
There we go. Okay, I had a feeling. It's like those are going to be consistently the same portions and everything every time. So it just gives you a little bit more reliability. Yeah.
Now, emotional eating is one of those topics that is very nuanced. And so we're not here to make, concrete claims about do this or do that. However, we did want to provide 2 POVs on what we do think can help you navigate emotional eating. Because sometimes if you're feeling like your food choices are driven by your emotions instead of your goals, that can be hard. And that does make fat loss harder. So knowing how to manage this and manage your food choices when you are in an emotional state can make fat loss easier. Because you don't end up after the fact being like, oh my God, I let my emotions dictate my food. The number one thing you can do is actually acknowledging the difference between hunger and drive to eat. And Paris and I actually did a podcast on this, which we'll send out in the thank you email as well. There is physical hunger, and there are things that we think are hunger, but are really just what we would call drive to eat. So for example, if my partner is opening up a bag of chips and I all of a sudden see those chips and be like, oh, I want those. I'm not actually hungry. I just have the drive to eat them. Or maybe I'm in a habit of watching TV and snacking at the same time. Because I'm watching TV, now I've got this drive to eat, but I'm not hungry. So acknowledging that hunger is a physiological state, you usually feel like your tummy's rumbling, right? Versus other reasons you might be trying to eat. So anytime you're about to kind of reach for food in an emotional state, it can be really helpful to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high is my physiological hunger right now? Is my tummy grumbling? If it's not 7, 8, or above, you're probably in a drive to eat state, and maybe that can help you kind of take a step back and go, I don't need to eat right now. The other thing is emotional eating. You know, some people don't eat when they're stressed, but if you're like me, I want to eat when I'm stressed. So this is actually a non-food choice. It's making a food choice by not choosing food, if that makes sense, and making sure that you have other stress management strategies in your back pocket. That could be breath work. That could be getting outside and going for a walk. It could be sleep. Sleep is kind of the crux of it all. But making sure that you do have stress management strategies so that food isn't the only thing that you reach for when you're in a stress state. Okay, cravings. It's another emotionally driven choice often, but it's not just emotional. It's also because we're craving enjoyment. And if we want to make food choices that make fat loss easier, fat loss ease comes with a little bit of enjoyment. The thing that we enjoy will naturally feel easier than the thing that we don't enjoy. So Paris and I are really big proponents for not blanket restricting the foods that you love and finding ways to include them purposefully. Because the more you say to yourself, I'm not going to eat that thing, and it's the number one thing you crave, the more likely it is that it's going to become a binge later on, or you're going to feel out of control around that food when it's around. So we like to use the 80-20 guidelines, and that is the number one principle we use when it comes to moderating portion sizes of foods that maybe are a little bit more tempting, but still finding a way to include them for sustainability and enjoyment. So the 80-20 guidelines is really 80% of your food choices. You want those to be let's say they're high protein, they're nutrient dense, so fruits and veggies, right? They're those high volume foods that we just talked about. Whole foods, we want that to be 80%. 20% can be the things that maybe we would consider a little bit more fun, or the things that might satisfy a craving. And if you are using any sort of food tracking strategies, it's actually a lot easier to think about, if I have a calorie goal I want to work towards, then I can kind of, it doesn't have to be exactly 80% and 20% of your calories, but you can roughly, quantify it to help suit your goals and figure out what portion sizes actually make sense of those foods. The other craving-based strategy that we are going to propose here today is same, but different. And that's just a fancier way of saying alternatives. Instead of denying yourself the foods you love, you find versions of them that support your goals. So the first two pictures are actually our own personal choices. I've known Paris his whole life because I'm his big sister. He's always loved ice cream since day one, or since he could eat ice cream. So his girlfriend gifting him a Ninja Creamy was one of the best things ever, because now he can have his ice cream. And Paris, I think you still enjoy it, right?
Yeah, that was actually a really good one. And it was like 320 calories.
Right,
So,
versus if you had that in the equivalent of like Breyer's ice cream or something, it probably would have been 600-700, right? So
more, yeah.
More, right. So finding versions of the foods you love. Now the potatoes don't look as exciting as the ice cream, but these are my go-to air fryer potatoes because I love French fries. But when I make these, my craving is satisfied. And there are different alternative swaps you can make too that aren't necessarily having to prepare a whole dish. So you see here, I've put the Olive Garden Italian dressing versus the Kraft fat-free Italian dressing. Same principle of putting Italian dressing on your salad, but the calorie difference is remarkable. So finding alternative versions of the foods you already love can help you check that craving box, but do so in a way that makes fat loss easier.
Love it. I have that salad dressing in my fridge right now, not gonna lie. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's the only salad dressing you ever have in your fridge.
That's true. It's like, I think 10 calories a serving is crazy. Okay, so Courtney gave us a lot of good insights in how can we make fat loss easier when it comes from like the calories in, and like how can we control for calories. Let's talk a little bit about calories out. Now we said The controllable ones are our non-exercise activity, like fidgeting, walking the dog, doing the dishes, me doing this right now, dancing around, or planned exercise, like going to the gym, going on a run, like those kind of things, doing a boot camp class, like those are all planned activities. And this is essentially what is the controllable contributor to calories out. But a key thing you have to realize is that we can't be relying on exercise to try to create a calorie deficit. Okay, it's going to be an uphill battle, and it's so much easier to just pull the trigger on controlling food intake than it is trying to, well, as a lot of people say, like outwork a bad diet. There's some truth to that, right? Because exercise itself makes up quite a small portion of the calories out equation. So trying to tilt the balance, into calorie deficit with just exercise is a lot harder, and typically is not going to be successful compared to focusing on controlling your calorie intake. Now, obviously, we want to be doing both, right? Very important that we want to be doing both, but we're not going to talk about all the stuff in nuances in terms of exercise right now. But in terms of tipping the balance towards a calorie deficit, we want to hammer this point home, okay? So strategies that make fat loss easier also will make weight maintenance easier. Okay, so the same strategies that were like, oh man, fat loss was a breeze this time for XYZ. We got somebody else joining. Sorry guys, we're gonna admit them. Okay, so all the strategies that we said, hey, that made fat loss so much easier. Those same things we also have to maintain when we are trying to maintain our body weight, right? And the key thing here is that sustainable process is going to give us sustainable progress. That's why our one of our key pillars, we said science, sustainability, and success. It's like, if we can have a sustainable process, we're going to keep those results. Because I don't know about you, I don't want to be lean for 15 days. I want to be lean for however long I want to be lean. And hopefully that's going to be the rest of my life, right? So it's really important that we have a sustainable process. And this is another case study here from one of our clients, Anita. Perfect example of she lost the body weight and was also able to hang on to a lot of those results. And the key things here is we found some key food swaps and a lot of those things that Courtney's talking about in terms of calorie density and those kind of sneaky calories popping in. We just made a few swaps, still kept things very enjoyable from the food perspective, but we didn't go crazy with any sort of restrictions. You can't eat this, you can't eat that. It was just controlling calorie intake, didn't use any cardio, just steps, weight training, and then really staying accountable to long-term habit development. That is the thing here that we have to realize. It can't be this 30-day sprint. It has to be, what are the habits and systems I need to create in my life, and what are the behaviors I need to adopt in order to make results now, but also results for later too. Right?
No
so
cardio.
Key.
That's no cardio. That's pretty impressive.
You guys will be surprised that most of the transformations that you'll see on our website or even anywhere are using pretty much zero cardio except for steps, generally speaking. And even some of you that may have seen some of the competition prep clients we work with, even this year, none of the competition prep clients we worked with used cardio this year. Last year, they used maybe a little bit, but not as much as you would think. Okay, so if we're looking at recipe for long-term success, okay, what are the recipes for long-term success? We want to be weight training. We talked about all the benefits to metabolic rate and muscle and strength and bone density, all those things, right? Talked about we want to be choosing high volume foods that keep us full and whole foods that give us good energy and make us feel good. We want to be eating high protein for the satiety benefits, but also for the muscle maintenance benefits. And then we want to maintain a high step count, so our baseline expenditure on a daily basis stays high, and also there's great, obviously, health benefits to steps as well. And then encompassing all these things is just adopting a lifestyle around this, right? Like, the thing is, we can look at these things as check boxes, but in order to check all these boxes, we do have to create this into a lifestyle, right? And having all the systems in place to be able to consistently check these off on a regular basis is what's ultimately going to set us up for short-term and long-term success. All right, so that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for staying online with us. Before we hand it to James for his special announcements, I know, James, you've gone from mountains to beach to Japan, like world traveler here. So before we hand it over to you, wherever you may be in the world, we would like to open it up to any questions. Yes, and Jamie, that's a great perspective. You have to identify as somebody who's already succeeded. I like that a lot.
I like that. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Identity shifts are everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to shout it out loud or pop it in the chat.
Don't be shy. I don't bite it. It's more of a nibble. So.
If we don't have questions, I'm going to ask an alternative. I'm going to actually ask a question back. Oh, here we go. Kelly, how do you break the after dinner sweet need? Paris, do you mind if I start with this one and then pass to you?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked that, Kelly, because I relate to that very much. I think many people here probably can. And there's a few different things that I would suggest personally, based on my experience and based on experience with the clients we've worked with. So if you have any feedback on them, please share. The first thing I think is actually making sure that I'm satisfied by my meal. And I know that sounds kind of counterproductive, but a lot of the times when I feel the need to reach for something sweet, it's actually because I'm still hungry. It's not actually sometimes having to do with that sweet thing per se. It could actually be because I'm still hungry, so I haven't eaten enough, or I'm just not satisfied by the meal that I did have. So sometimes actually taking a look at my meals and being like, did I actually eat enough at dinner? Glad you're having that experience, Jamie, but did I eat enough at dinner can be really helpful. The other thing with sweetness is, like, I think don't shy away from it, right? The more we deny it, the more likely it is that we're going to want more. So including sweets productively can be really helpful. And so I'm not sure kind of which methods you're currently using, but with some of our clients, well, with most of our clients, they do track their food. And if we know that you're going to be craving sweets, we might then say, you know what, make having a couple squares of chocolate after dinner actually part of your routine, and account for it in advance, plan for that. And then you can kind of move through your day knowing that that's coming and it's going to be satisfying for you, and not having that concern of, I'm full after dinner, I crave the sweet treat. Yes. So even if you're not hungry, then I would definitely say, then lean into actually intentionally including that in a moderate portion. So one of the things that I often do is I call it productive pairings. So I will pair something sweet with something that is nutrient dense. So my go-to is like having dark chocolate with, a clementine or some other sort of fruit. So I'm getting the benefit of the sweetness I'm craving with nutritional benefits as well. That's one tip. The other tip I'd give you when it comes to wanting something sweet would just be finding actually lower calorie sweet treats that still satisfy that craving for you. And this is going to be super individualized. It's different for everybody, but I have some clients that will have like Jello cups, like sugar-free Jello, and they're like, great, it's sweet. Or in the summertime, like I personally was buying these like little ice cream sandwiches, which were 90 calories. That's way better if I intentionally include one of those than maybe opening up a pint, right? So looking for things that are going to be in moderate portion sizes or relatively lower calories. I hope some of that helps.
Yeah. I'm going to add on that too. I'm going to build on that. Those are great. The thing is, as Courtney said, it's like, if you have a set like calorie, go say budget for the day that you're trying to hit, you can very easily plan ahead. Like, let's say, you always want chocolate after dinner. Myself, I do actually eat a lot of dark chocolate. That's like my thing. So I will know that I will already plan that into my day. So then it's already included as part of my quote unquote calorie budget for the day. So that, oh, Jelani's joining us. So that when I get to the end of the day, I know it's already budgeted for. Also, there's something I call like the 5-minute rule with myself, because typically post meal, when you have that craving, it comes in really hard, but then it also can, if you give it a few minutes, it can also go away. So something I like to do is when I have, let's say I have an intense craving for chocolate, and if I did eat it, it would have gone over my calories for the day or something. I will take a 5-minute break and say, if I still want this after 5 minutes, I can have it. Otherwise, I'm just going to move on. And typically, not always, but a lot of time, is giving yourself that 5-minute pause. Then you realize you don't actually want it. The craving comes in fast after the meal, but then it kind of goes away. So yeah, that's what I found personally. Tina, any advice for?
We have so much faith you will, Kelly. I think tried some of those strategies out, and we look forward to hearing your feedback if you do give them a shot, and let us know what you think.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of going through menopause, now we have to remember, although certain phases can make things more or less challenging depending on different life stages that we get in, the principles don't change in regards to fat loss or fat loss maintenance and all these things. So it's still going to revolve around the concepts that we talked about today. And regardless of what phase of life or what's going on biologically or physiologically, we're still going to be revolving around the same principles. So a lot of times, I know it can be discouraging if you say, hey, I was so happy with all that progress I made and I feel like I'm moving backwards. I think we can all relate to that. right? I think we can all relate to that. But a lot of times it's more the feeling that we feel like we lost control over our journey. So my advice in that scenario, because I've been there where, you know, I was like, oh, I made all this progress and I feel like I've taken a few steps back. What I like to tell myself is like, just create momentum. And once you're in momentum, you're going to feel so much better. And if you just focus on what is in my control that I can do to start taking some action and start to create some positive momentum in the direction I want to go, instead of looking backwards, we start to look forward in terms of creating momentum. That's just what I have to say personally. Courtney, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say it is the same principles. You know, what changes as we move through life is the different things that we're faced with, right? And how our days are structured and our priorities and things like that. And like, I'm really sorry to hear about your diagnosis, and I hope you're doing well overall, because, you know, health is number one and the weight is part of that, but health is number one, right? So I hope you're feeling okay and you're making progress on your diagnosis as well. But we do work with a number of clients who are either perimenopausal or past the menopause phase. And like Anita was one of the case studies. She was a great example of that. So it is certainly possible. It might just mean that you have to adapt the strategies you use to your current lifestyle. And I think one thing that is absolutely critical for menopausal women, or the two things I see a lot of with the clients we work with, number one is appetite tends to change. You know, sometimes, you know, you might not necessarily want to eat as much in terms of like food volume, but one thing that actually kind of goes by the wayside is protein. A lot of the menopausal women that we work with struggle with getting protein in. So making sure that remains like key, at least then, you know, we can think about it from the fat loss lens instead of just weight loss, and essentially like filling your available calories with like protein first, right? And letting that lead the charge. And then the second thing that's extra important for menopausal women is the resistance training, because the hormonal changes that you experience in that stage do affect your body's ability to maintain muscle mass. So the conversation that we had around like weight loss versus fat loss becomes even more important in that stage of life for women. You know, after the age of 30, women start losing muscle mass 3 to 8% every decade. And after 60, it just accelerates. So starting to think about like, hey, how am I also maintaining muscle? You might actually find that when you take that lens, the body fat also comes off, because the actions that you take in pursuit of muscle maintenance naturally lead to fat loss. You're prioritizing protein instead of other calorie sources. Your, you know, your training, maybe your expenditure goes up a little bit. So, I mean, again, like this is a super big topic that we'd love to unpack further, but we hope that's a good starting point at least. And if you want to continue the conversation, we're definitely here to do so.
Yeah. Also, one last thing on that, and then if you guys want to type some more questions in the chat, is like I also find there's a big sleep disruption component in regards to women going through that, you know, part of life. So it's really making sure your sleep strategies are on point, and also acknowledging, okay, having some awareness on like, if I'm not getting enough sleep, what are the downstream effects of that in terms of if it's cravings or energy or motivation or, you know, all these things. So anyways, I don't want to spend all the time on it, but I think these are just some things to think about. I hope that was helpful in some way, shape, or form.
You're very welcome, Tina.
Anytime.
You're not alone. You're certainly not alone in any of that. I can assure
Definitely
you.
Not. Definitely not.
50% of us, well, me 100%, but 50% of our population is going to go through that experience, right? So yeah, it's important.
That's true. Any other questions? Don't be shy, guys. Seriously, like if there's anything that, even if it's not attached to this conversation that we had today, if there's something that you've been thinking about even in the past week, or you saw a post about something and you were like, not sure if that's true or if that's good information, like we're here to help. Don't be shy. As I said, I don't bite. It's more of a nibble. So no other questions. James, do you have any questions? Oh, we have one more person coming in.
I don't have any questions, but I would like to say that this chat was very, very productive and informative, and it's clear you guys really care. And I would really recommend, if anybody is not being coached by you, I would really recommend you guys as coaches. I think that, like I said, you really care about the client, and it's clear that you're very informed. And too often I see with clients, they present a very, just eat this kind of like a meathead approach, just, eat this rice and
chicken.
and
Yeah.
chicken type diet and do this and do that. And I feel for most of the people that are part of RBT, the reality is that that's not sustainable, as you say in this thing, long term. And they really need a strategy for life. And I think that when you go with somebody that can help you develop these habits, whatever the investment is that you're paying into it, that's something where you can take these habits and go for the rest of your life with. And I've seen it over and over again, like doing this. And this RBT started as a TV show, and I've seen so many clients and different people that are, competing in RBT come and go. And the one thing that I saw that messes people up is when they go too strict and in a way that's not sustainable, inevitably they crash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that goes for the diet. Like if it's too restrictive, they just end up binge eating, and then they then they're out, they quit altogether. Yeah. Or it goes with the exercise, and they go they're running, 5,000 kilometers the first day, and then they're sore, and then they can't. And really what you need is something that's consistent and sustainable. And I love that you guys have shown me with this presentation that you're working towards that path with clients. And I think that's what people need realistically more than anything, because, for a short period of time, you can follow those bodybuilder, diets, and you can do this or whatever, but that's not going to get you through life. And, like Paris said, this isn't just about staying lean for the next few weeks. How are you going to be sustained and healthy long term?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jim. Very good points. And I think one of the main reasons why I'm so passionate about this is because I did do the extreme stuff when I was young. Luckily, I tested out when I was young, so I could learn early in life, right? But I did do that really extreme kind of dieting phase, and then, had the rebound and the food guilt and the binging, and I've done all that before, so I know how it is, so I can relate to it. But I also don't want people to have to do that, I guess, in one way, shape, or form. It's just there's other ways, right? And I know Mark has his hand up, so I don't want to neglect the question.
Thank you, James.
So much,
We really appreciate that thought, and we're glad it came across that way, because that's our intention, is to really put that sustainability, but then also recognizing sustainability looks different for everybody too. It's very personal. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Courtney. Hey, Paris. Hey, Courtney. Thanks so much for this. This is every time we get a chance to chat or listen to you guys, I always learn some more valuable tidbits of information here. And for those that don't know, I've been working with Paris for about 3 years now. There's one question I had, and first of all, I appreciate the fact that there's no cardio in my in my program. Although I used to run a lot back in the day. But one of the things that I'm always curious about is exercise. So the non-exercise based activity versus I guess exercise. And for me, I find that there are differences between when I purposefully walk versus the 7,500 steps that I just accumulated during the day by just being alive. And I know I've asked you this once or twice before, and I don't want to pick up the spot, but are all steps created equal?
We were actually talking about that earlier today, Mark, because I was telling Paris we were planning our next set of podcast topics, and I was like, we have to do this one that Mark has asked about.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I'll give kind of my thoughts, and Courtney, maybe you can build if you don't mind. So I think of it as efficiency with with output per unit of time almost. So if I do a casual pace of steps for 10 minutes versus if I, did a really fast pace of steps for 10 minutes, yes, I would, in that 10-minute time span, I would burn more calories doing the faster steps, right? But if we're tracking total daily steps, then yes, all all steps are created equally in terms of a calorie expenditure standpoint. Now, where the difference comes in is when we do other modalities that are at a higher intensity, like for example, using the elliptical or running or different things like that, not only are we a bit more efficient with our calorie burning, but also there's definitely a cardiovascular component where our cardiovascular health would improve to a greater extent. Not to say it wouldn't improve with the steps, because that's like, very great, but to even greater extent, especially for people that are in, cardiovascular performing events or different things like that. But from a pure calorie expenditure standpoint, like if we're looking at total daily steps of me walking quicker versus walking slower, if they both net out to the same amount of steps per day, they would be created equally. One just is done in less of a time frame and more of a cardiovascular benefit potentially than the slower ones. I hope that made sense.
It does. And last week, so my sister came up to do some gardening here at our place, and I got 20,000 steps in that day. It was kind of crazy. I said to my wife at one point, I said, I don't think she's stopping. Like, she just keeps going and going and going with the gardening, and we're taking a break.
She gogoes beast mode. I know, Jacqueline.
She goes completely beast mode on the garden. Yeah, and so I did notice, those 20,000 versus the next day, like having to, put in a dedicated. All right, I got to go for an hour walk here if I'm going to hit my 12,000 steps today. So it's good to know that just the ones that you can accumulate versus the ones that you have to purposefully go and, okay, I got to top up my steps today.
Right.
They're all the same.
I know we're running short on time, but I would just add my one quick build onto that before we entertain any other questions. Is just at the end of the day, part of it is also just being able to have consistent expenditure, and sometimes just step counts in the form of everyday walks is the way that people can actually do that every day, right? It is hard to say like, okay, we actually want to, have intentional cardio sessions every day. It's not always practical, or like, kind of burning out quickly then has other impacts on recovery or appetite, right? So having just a set step target is also the easiest way to keep your expenditure consistent from one day to the next, so that you can actually measure progress and measure changes and know, okay, we know that this variable has been the same.
Yes, and then it's an easy lever to pull as another variable for progress. I think that's like the biggest thing with step tracking. It keeps your expenditure consistent, but then also it's like, okay, if I need to ramp up my expenditure, I know I'm doing 8,000 steps. Okay, maybe with an additional adjustment, I might also bump up my steps to 11,000, and then usually the plateau can be broken. And you keep going, right? So it's just kind of knowing those things. But yeah, I think the biggest thing about steps is it's so approachable for me to say, hey, Mark, I just need you to do an extra 2,000 steps a day. All right, Paris, I'm going to go after dinner with my wife on a walk. You know what I mean? Versus me saying, okay, you know what, 3 times a week, I need you on the elliptical for 30 more minutes. And maybe you don't have an elliptical at home. I know you do, but a lot of people don't. Now you're like, shoot, I got to drive to the gym again, even though I was just there just to do that. What if you're a busy guy? You got kids, which you do. You got sporting events. You got cottage to take care of. It's like, that might be a lot on your lifestyle. So it's like, it's very approachable to just add steps. But anyways, that's my thoughts. Yeah. Good question though, man. Thank you for that.
And just one last comment on the I'm not going to comment on menopause, but I just want to say that andropause is a thing too.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's very true.
Testosterone levels crashing as well too. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, good point. Thank you for bringing that up. That's very true.
Yeah, very real.
Yeah.
And same principles, right? Protein, other dietary components, resistance training.
Stress
can do
management,
a lot of
sleep.
magic. Stress management, yeah.
All the same principles. Yeah. Awesome stuff, man. Anybody else? Anything?
I know Chris got his steps in. I was gonna say Chris got his steps in. We were talking about steps. Yeah. I was watching the beautiful blue skies, and I was like, "This looks like an amazing day." I'm glad you paired this session with steps. So productive. I love that.
Well, I usually do a 15-minute walk after every meal just to get her going. And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
And then I average about 25,000 a day.
Amazing.
Wow, good for you. That's amazing.
That's with cardio though.
Okay.
Well,
makes
yeah,
sense.
included. Yeah. So efficiently getting those steps. Yeah, we had Christopher getting all the steps. We had Jamie lifting all the weights. Hopefully they left some steps.
I saw some good RDL form going on back there, Jamie. Some nice deadlift action. Yeah.
That's awesome. But yeah, guys, if there's no other questions, we will pass it to James because he does have an announcement. But before we do that, Courtney just is going to say one last thing, just in case you want to learn more. If you're on the education train, Education Nation, then this is the slide for you. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried our best to fit as much as we could into this presentation, and we were prioritizing what we thought would be most relevant to this group. But, you know, if you do want additional information, please find us on Instagram, reach out with your questions, or we have a podcast as well, which you can find on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We basically answer a question every week on the podcast. So if you have questions, like Mark did, he sent us some suggestions that we've added to our list. If you have questions of topics you want us to do like a deep dive in, please let us know. We're happy to do them. And then if you do want to work with us, if you're curious about what it could look like to apply these strategies to build your own personal programming, then I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now just to an application form. If you're curious to have like a one-on-one consultation and just chat through how we would consider applying this to your own individual needs, feel free to reach out to us through the application form or on Instagram or anywhere.
And we will be, by the way, we are sponsoring the RBT event next year, so we're 100% going to be there. Hopefully with some of our clients as well. We had 3 this year attending, but regardless, we're going to have a booth set up with you guys over there. So hopefully we got to come up with some creative ideas for some fun stuff when we're there.
And we'll be able to meet you in person as well, which would be
great. Yeah. Okay, James, passing the baton over to you.
The man of the hour.
Well, I would say, again, I highly recommend you guys as coaches. And, you know, of course, we have the RBT show next June 12th. But even though that's calendar a while away, it really, especially for transformation, it's worthwhile planning ahead of time so that you can, you know, nail that and come in properly. And one thing I would say, so my personal thing, I had always, since I was 16, worked out. And I was around 34, 35 years old, and I decided on a lark to do my first contest. And at that time, I got a diet plan, I got a coach, and I had an event on my calendar, and that made all the difference in the world. Making those steps, I had never seen, like, I don't have the best abs genetically, but I had never seen my abs before until I had done that. And I didn't realize, and once you set a goal and it really focuses you, it changes everything. And it made me a lot more serious. And I learned so much about food by getting a coach that after that, I couldn't unsee it. And it was very, very helpful. So I would really recommend getting a coach and not trying to do it on your own. I know Jamie just said something in the chat or whatever. And I think he kind of learned.
He just said
accountability piece.
Yeah.
Corey and I still have coaches.
We both have coaches of our own
to this day.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate what you said, Jamie, about that, and thanks, James, for sharing that, because like it saves you time, energy, and the second guessing. And also, again, I always say, like, in school, if the teacher didn't check your homework, would you do your homework? Maybe not to the same degree as if the teacher was checking. So it's kind of important.
Yeah, it's also like the biggest value I've personally taken out of having a coach for myself is like, sometimes it's not about knowledge or anything either. Kathleen, I see you. It's just like taking the mental load away. Like, we make so many decisions over the course of our day, and we're never going to be completely objective about ourselves either. Making decisions about, ask me what I want for lunch and I'll hem and haw for 30 minutes. I mean, I eventually decide, but Paris has seen it time and time again with me. So having somebody else to be like, nope, we're increasing food this week. Great. And me not having to think about it. Yeah, Mark, great point, right? It's just having someone to take the mental load off.
And it's so hard to see your own progress, to see where you're at, rather than having somebody else evaluate it, you know, because it's just like growing hair. Like, it happens so slowly that you don't really see it, but having somebody else, so it really makes a big difference. And whatever the investment that you make in that, I had learned so much in that period of time that I still take with me today, just like the way that I think about food differently and I understand about food differently. Like, if you just see within this, what a resource you guys are in terms of being able to ask questions. And it's a difference between if you're out at sea and you have a map at where you're going, rather than you're just sort of drifting and you're like, I hope I get to the right direction. Like, that's how much of a difference it is.
Yeah,
That's a good analogy.
that's a great analogy. We love analogies, by the way. If anyone
Yeah.
does, Mark, I know you listen to our podcast. If anyone else does, then like you'll see how many analogies we use.
Yeah.
I saw Kathleen raise her hand as well, so just wanted to give her an opportunity to speak if she wanted to still.
You have to take it off mute, Kathleen. Go for it.
Yeah. She might be making pottery potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her hands are dirty.
I'm totally making pottery. I've got like a couple hundred pieces here. But I just wanted to
Love
thank you guys just for everything. I see Melinda and Kelly. Know them both very well, so it was great to see them tonight. But I think that's awesome, and I love the idea. You guys were talking about the coaching aspect, and I agree. Coaches should have coaches because you always want to be attached to somebody who knows more than you, so you can gain that knowledge and apply it to your life. But that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, Kathleen is a great coach as well. And this is going to be the best special for registering for RBT that we have all year. So here's the rate. So it's going to be $247 to register Canadian, which is $180 US. But here's the extra special thing. So we have shirts by I Am Fitness. These shirts to buy on the website are $40 shirts, but they're going to have RBT on them as well. So it's going to have, they're co-branded. And I think we have a couple of different colors. And the first 20 people from now that register for like our back to school special, the special rate is $247 Canadian or $180 US. And you get the shirt for free, which is a $40 value. So essentially for
That's
like
awesome.
$217 or whatever Canadian or however it works out in US. And so it's like this where it's sleeveless, it's dry fit, it's got the hood on it. I can't really showcase it the way I want to, but you can see that
We can
they
see,
look
yeah.
great.
Oh yeah, it looks great.
And the good thing is, like, even if you're not super fit right now, it's very kind of like it looks good on the front. Even if you're not jacked and if you have big arms, so you still look really fit. So
I love it. That's awesome.
But you're setting that goal so that by the time you do the show, you will have the abs or you will be leaner and you will have all these other components. So it's something to work towards. So I think it's a great deal. And also we signed a deal with Mile High Compounds, this is Max. Now, you guys mentioned the GLP things. That was after my time. I don't know anything about these, drugs. I'm not recommending or not recommending. I really am indifferent to it because I don't know enough about it to comment. But Max offers, I know that he sells it like hotcakes. So everybody that is part of RBT will get a discount on his compound website. If you are interested in taking those or other drugs or whatever, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a coach. Talk to your coach, talk to your doctor about what, works for you. With RBT, we don't have a policy in terms of bariatric. We don't limit people that have done bariatric. We don't limit people that are taking GLPs or if they are taking TRT or whatever. We don't have any rules on that because so much of our score is about like how much you're changing and your story and what you've overcome regardless anyway. So we don't get into that, but I want to provide resources for people that are going to do those things anyway, that they have access to it. And I know that Max already has really great prices, but there will be a further discount for people that are part of RBT that are interested in doing that. And apparently they ship both to Canada and the US. So that on top of it. So if you sign up today, essentially, or whenever for the back to school, you get the special discount, which is much cheaper than the advertised rate on the website. Plus you get the free awesome shirt that's dry fit of a $40 value. So
amazing. And Jamie was asking, will we be locked in on that price if we register then and decide to join other categories?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
That's great.
So
Jamie, to answer your question.
Yeah, and to be honest, Jamie, this would look good on you because you got beefy arms, so it'll agree with you.
There we go.
You got some biceps yourself there, James.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, if you get cold, you just put the hood up, so you don't have to cover up your arms. So
my chest is down between their games.
It's too funny, guys. Okay, awesome. That's it. All right, should we leave it off there? You guys, I appreciate, and I know Courtney does as well, everybody joining. I know time is, of the essence a lot of times for people. So we really, really appreciate you spending the time today. This is what we do 24/7 pretty much. So we do appreciate, the ability to be here and talk to you guys about stuff that we could talk about all day long. So Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that sums it up. I'll just say my own thanks and thank you to everybody who was willing to spend the time with us. And like I said, we tried really hard to distill a lot of thoughts into this hour, but we have a lot more thoughts. So if you do want to chat about anything that feels specific to you, please, please, please find us and reach out. We're happy to do so.
Awesome. Well, with that, we'll let you guys have an awesome evening or whatever time it is, depending on where you're tuning in from. Thanks again.
Oh yeah, can you tell, since Michelle's listening, that the stove keeps going off so the chicken's ready?
Oh, lucky you, the protein's ready, right?
Yeah.
I practice what I preach.
I love it. I love it. Well, bon appetit.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody.